Welcome to America's Commercial Real Estate Show, your source for market intel, forecasts, and strategies. Hello, I'm Michael Bull. Thank you for being with us. This segment is brought to you by Buxton. Check them out. Their website's buxtonco.com, and what you'll find there is incredible analytics using mobile phone traffic. You've got to see this. Go to buxtonco.com. Well, today we have another very interesting show for you. You know, one of the things that people seem to be struggling with is getting back to the office. You know, a lot of our office buildings, the tenants are kind of half using the spaces they're leasing. We're seeing a slowdown of absorption and an increase in sublease space in most markets. Also, a lot of people have been talking about the mental health issues of people working from home and not having that office environment. Also talking about health and wellness. After going through COVID, it seems like we're all more conscious of health and germs and healthy environments. And I've said before that I think if anything good comes out of COVID, it's a healthier built environment, a healthier office environment, number one in my mind, because we tend to spend a lot of times at our offices and wherever we work. Well, I have a treat for you. My guest is Dr. Matt Trowbridge. He's Chief Medical Officer with the International Well Building Institute. He's also an Associate Professor at University of Virginia School of Medicine. Dr. Trowbridge, thank you for joining us, sir.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
And I guess my first question has to be, you're a physician, so why do you spend so much time dealing with the built environment?
Absolutely. It's a question I get asked all the time, and I certainly understand why. But my kind of short answer, but it's a real one, is the data brought me here. As a physician, obviously, my personal mission every morning is to wake up and think about, how can I make the most people healthy as possible. At an individual level, but also at a population scale. And the reality is I'm not alone there, obviously. Public health agencies around the world ask those same questions, like where should we put our resources and so forth. And it turns out, actually, when we, and I use the royal we in terms of all of public health, think about what actually drives health outcomes, i.e., our quality of life, our life expectancy. It turns out that only about 20% of our health outcomes are determined by variance in the quality of our medical care. So it's a little sobering for me to realize that all the energy my physician colleagues and I put into in our healthcare jobs, really only about 20%. So where's the rest of it? That's where what the big research finding of the last 40, 50 years in public health has been that actually the things that we can modify that drive our health, most of them fall into what we call the social and environmental determinants of health. So it's all the conditions in which we live our lives, many of which we can't immediately impact, but some of them we can. And for example, the physical environment that we live in, the research is really overwhelming that, not surprisingly, if you are trying to encourage people to walk more, to eat more healthily, to have stronger connections to their communities, well, turns out the way we build places makes a huge difference in terms of the availability of safe places to walk and so forth. And that extends all the way into our indoor environments as well. So I think, so there's the answer. It's basically the data really have shown us that we've got to get outside the clinical spaces to help people's health, and that certain things, particularly the built environment, there's a very limited number of things that have a big impact, but that you can also change. And the built environment is, that's one of its really unique features, is that it's hard to change the real estate built environment writ large at a global scale, but we can do it. And that's why I'm thrilled. Obviously, I've been working on that as a researcher for a long time, but it's why I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to be the Chief Medical Officer and the Executive Record for what we call the Investing for Health Initiative at the International Well Building Institute, because in this new seat I have, we have a chance to work with your audience members to maybe take a shot at making healthy places at scale.
Appreciate you being on the show, because I think it's such an important thing to think about today, and I think we're all more conscious of it, right? Because I've just gone through COVID, and then a lot of business leaders are looking for ways to get their folks back in the office, and a lot of office building owners are trying to do the same. And I guess the first thing to touch on is your thoughts on what are the benefits to the individual employees to get them together in a healthy environment, office environment again.
Sure. Well, you're right. Like the behavior that I think we all want is to have environments that are exciting to go to. The places where the physical space itself kind of just helps you do your best work. That they're designed to foster collaboration. That they have really intentional thinking, features, policies related to diversity and inclusion, making sure that they don't just have an aesthetic that works for just one person, but that they really think about, how do we make a really welcoming space? And then the whole host of kind of more, tangible things like making sure your air quality, your water quality is really high levels for like kind of those direct health impacts. And then I also think that, so those things are just shown to be incredibly important to our actual health. And then I also think there's a really cool opportunity for businesses to use their spaces to kind of signal how intentional they are about caring for their employees, caring about their community impact. So I think there's a real opportunity to use our buildings and how we can to manifest your company's brand, and for your audience to kind of be part of helping your tenants kind of tell a strong story, both in things like employee retention and satisfaction, but also increasingly, as we can probably address later in our conversation, even things like being part of their ESG story and so forth. Yeah. So I think it's an exciting time.
Yeah, it is. Dr. Trowbridge, give us your thoughts on the mental health aspect of this, because it seems like the lack of belonging to something bigger, and also we keep hearing more and more about mental health issues with this kind of work from home. What are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. Mental health traditionally in public health has always had a hard time gaining, I think, the resources and focus that it deserves. It really was only very recently that as we started to switch, not just from a pure health perspective, but actually these terms we throw around like kind of flippantly are actually highly technical. So the word well-being in public health is actually quite distinct from wellness. Let me explain. So your health, for example, when I speak to it, that is something you can kind of objectively talk about. We are all, because of our genetics, born with some degree of just our health. That then well-being is different. When we talk about that in public health, what we're really talking about is the idea that we believe that every individual has the opportunity or has the right to expect to be able to live to their fullest potential. That's their well-being. And I think, so as we're starting to realize that we're such social creatures, mental health has started to emerge and get more resources behind it. Then, of course, we had this collective experience of what it means to be isolated from one another. And I think all of us individually, through our families, and of course through our workspaces and work colleagues, saw the impact of that and how it's also differential depending on your situation. If we're blunt, groups, people like myself, more at an executive level, or I have a home with space. Actually, I can, working from home, I was able to adapt to. But some of our younger employees, people just getting started who need to make connections as that kind of essential networking, kind of learn on the job function, not coming into the office has real implications. And so I think there's a real need to recognize how, we need these gathering moments in our lives. And of course, work is a huge part of that.
Yeah. And Dr. Trowbridge, give us some ideas if we own office buildings or we manage them, or we're leaders of a big company. What could we do to help get folks back in the office and help give them that environment that fosters this kind of well-being?
Well, absolutely. As I kind of said, I really enjoyed listening to some of your previous episodes where you talked a lot about kind of these emerging opportunities and, let's face it, challenges of that return to office moment. I genuinely believe that the one thing that is important to do is obviously look for any opportunity you have to send a clear, like really concise, strong signal that you are investing in your employees. And again, I do believe that your space does offer an opportunity to make that very tangible. I do work for the International Well Building Institute, and I joined it for a reason. I think what I like about the Well Standard is that it combines, it gives you a holistic set of features and a framework for not just doing like checkbox kind of one-off features, which are important, but it also encourages and actually demands a focus on things like what policies are in place, and kind of what the commitments are from the employer. And so, the goal is to have things like a well seal really be a really clear market signal internally about the culture that you're investing in, and externally, obviously, to the community and hopefully to investors as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. I mean, so that's my my softball response, of course, but we can go deeper into some of the things I find really interesting.
Yeah, and if you will, I'd like to talk about briefly the 10 concepts of the well building standard, because when I first heard about them and started exploring them, I got pretty excited, and I think one of the things was healthy food, right?
Yeah.
And I was asking someone on your team, how do you get get your folks to want to eat and drink healthy food and drinks? And somebody from your team said, Michael, if you're paying for it, you're giving it to them for free, they'll eat and drink whatever you give them. So give them something healthy, right? Tell us about the 10 concepts, if you will.
So absolutely. So yeah, well, as I said, is organized into 10 concepts. Real quickly, I'll run through them. So things like, that you might expect: air, water, light, movement, and thermal comfort, things that we're kind of used to thinking about. But as you said, it also includes interesting ones like nourishment, a really particular focus on acoustics and sound, what materials you're using. But then it stretches into some of my favorite concepts actually relate to things like mind and community, where it really overtly, and the important thing to note is like this is the way it was organized, from years back. So it's always been that way. But when you think about it now in these days as we're taking on, maybe pre-COVID when we weren't as used to the return to office challenge, mind and community, they may not have felt like as urgent an issue, whereas we're actually finding some of our clients and people we work with through the well journey, those might end up being some of their most important necessities right now. Specific to your nourishment question, yeah, it's the reality is some of my favorite research out there that kind of isn't overtly a built environment, but it has a really nice application in our space, like related to healthy eating, is the field of behavioral economics, is it's called. And I'll summarize it really quickly, but basically the concept is that if you take something like how you present food in a lunch line, the reality is the order in which you present things really makes a difference in terms of what we pick. So it's like, there's these free things in terms of like, if you really want to be part of promoting, healthier food or healthier kind of meals, literally like what you choose to present up front can make a huge difference in terms of what your employees pick. You're not telling them what to pick, but it turns out, unfortunately, humans are maybe a little more simple than we like to admit. And we can be, we're going to make a choice. So if you think about it, as they call it, what the defaults are, you can actually have a huge influence. So
yeah, I mean,
that's one example.
Yeah, if I'm going through the chow line and the cheesecake is the first thing, and I've got room on my plate, right?
Exactly. And office is one thing, that has really interesting manifestations that maybe feels a little less like, strange or out of place if you think about things like schools or other space types which well can be employed.
Yeah. Dr. Trowbridge, what are some ideas for office building owners and managers of things that they could do, maybe related to the well building standard, that could help operations, help these tenants get their folks back and be successful?
Well, sure. I mean, it is really, it's a scary time. Let's just be blunt, because no one has a crystal ball. But I do think that, again, I've really enjoyed some of your previous episodes talking about, the data of what we're seeing. And as Doug Ressler, I believe his name was, from Commercial Edge, pointed out, the reality is that the job market, particularly among those kind of really desirable young employees, is actually pretty strong. They're mobile. It's not so much that they're retiring, but they know they have a choice, right? And so I mean, to me, it's basically like, again, I keep hammering on it, but sending a really strong signal that you make an investment in your people, I think is a really strong thing you can do. I think also going through the kind of process, not just trying to get the badge at the end, but actually the framework pushes you to think more holistically about the opportunities you might have in your space. And I think it can help organize your team to think about, hey, what are the acoustic needs of kind of like more Zoom calls in our day? Like what are the barriers that, like, it is still, maybe there was a rough transition state where there actually were some realities of new types of work that were a little bit easier to get done in your quiet, home studio office. So what could we do in our new space in the office? And we have lots of expertise and features that help you think through just that as just one example. But then also things like, how do you make inclusive, kind of welcoming, kind of communal spaces for everyone, and not just like some of your more, kind of run-of-the-mill, standard employees, but like all the young, diverse, talented folks that you're trying to bring into your in space, or that your tenants also, obviously are looking to send a clear message in terms of their corporate values.
Yeah. Yeah, and I lead a team that sells large office buildings, and we're selling a lot of them. And as we go through them, sometimes I shake my head of, there seems like there's some things as building owners and operators that we could do, like touchless technology, right?
Right.
Why are we all touching these doors and
Absolutely.
everything? What are some other ideas for owners of properties that could help?
No, absolutely. I mean, as I already mentioned, just from my own, personal experience, I like you, like the things we all notice are going to be different. Sound, as I already mentioned, but I also do think there's been such huge strides in terms of like thermal comfort, HVAC systems. The well process works really well with a lot of these like movements towards things like digital twins and stuff, where, understanding your space in a new way. But maybe, thinking a lot about like, how can you not just provide great smart systems, but make the controls for those systems more overt and accessible for people to be able to kind of have a chance to modify their environments a little bit. And then again, as I said, I just love this new movement to really think about what are like even choices like aesthetics, including an intentional moment in a process where you ask, hey, I respond to this color or this palette or this kind of aesthetic positively, but does everyone else? Like, does it accidentally send a different signal? It doesn't take a ton of time or expense, but it's just that extra intentionality and a little bit of thought that we think the well process helps. We believe it can increase the probability that you end up with an asset that is, nicely fit to your population and serves you as long as possible.
Yeah, good point. I was in a lobby of a building 2 days ago that going up to the elevators, and the wall behind it was waterfalls and then just plants that were on the wall. And when I went in that space, I just felt better.
Well, that's called biophilia. I should have. Thank you for reminding me. That's actually one of my favorite concepts. This idea of how there's a lot of research showing that exposure to nature really makes a difference. The interesting part is it actually doesn't necessarily need to be literal nature. As you said, it can be things like water features, plants. Seeing views outside can actually, to be honest, we're finding that we get a lot of the benefit even sometimes from like artistic depictions of natural elements and things like that, colors and so forth. So yeah, to your point, the fun part about our job is that there's so much research and innovation going on across the board. It's our job as a standard setter to when we have a robust, set of experts on our standard development team, we just take in as much research as we possibly can. And we're always thinking about ways to bring it out to the market in kind of like clean, easy to implement and easy to certify features.
Dr. Trowbridge, do you think the business leaders and property owners get a feel for the cost on their people's mental health, physical health, the cost on productivity of the employees not having a sense of belonging, and is there an increase in turnover, and is there retention more of an issue? What do people think about?
Yeah, so just cut to the chase. I am a scientist, so I always am careful to point out that, it's early days for this new trend, of thinking. So we're not at the stage yet like we are for environmental performance of buildings, where we can point to 20 years of data and experience and make super conclusive things. What we can say is some early. We do have anecdotal evidence and emerging evidence that those things really do matter, and certainly at a large scale. To your point, it doesn't take a study to know that if your employee base is suffering from mental health, sources of isolation, burnout, that their productivity goes down. So that evidence is super strong, and then we do believe that it's clear that you can make interventions in the built environment, even just indoors, that drives that kind of the kind of predecessors to those burnout type of things. So the answer is like we know we're going in the right direction. We know these things are have an impact, and I really encourage everyone to jump on this trend because I do think one thing I've learned from being a student of the green building movement is that I had it said to me one time by an owner. I was asking kind of like, as I was early in understanding, like, what's the motivation of doing LEED and things like that? And I was told, man, the worst thing that can happen to us is to build a building and then have it be, kind of become obsolete because we missed some sort of trend at the wrong moment. And that really stuck with me. And I do feel very confident telling your audience that, in my estimation, because of things like the general awareness of how environments impact health and so forth, with at the general audience level, general population level, I know this is a trend that's going to keep accelerating in terms of people asking, so what's the health story of this asset? Like, show me the features, show me the intentionality of it. And I really encourage people to take it seriously and not miss this trend.
We keep hearing that the mental health issues of this work from home, but how big an issue really is it?
Yeah, I don't have the specific statistics at my fingers here, but it's I think it is as big as everyone believes it is. And I don't necessarily think you have to wait for a poll, although I have seen some great work, some great work done by groups like Just Capital and so forth, talking about this kind of that sense of community again after COVID, and you can see it across the board. So I think that trend and that desire to come back out of the pandemic, as fast as we are allowed, and start to see each other at work, outside of work is very strong. And I think anything we can do in the real estate space to help that is going to be really important.
Yeah, we were talking before the show, and I mentioned to you that I've been telling folks for years that I think the well building standards and the Well Building Institute's certification is going to be really, really big in the future. And then here comes COVID, and now we're kind of really in the midst of it, right?
Yes, I mean honestly, our IWI and the International Well Building Institute, we really are experiencing that kind of hockey stick moment that you always hear about. I mean, the statistics are exciting. We also see them as a responsibility. What do I mean by that? I mean, the well standard is now utilized in over 100 countries. We have well over 20,000 projects worldwide, but more. We actually, as you said, that's actually not even the right way to think about it. We're into the multiple billions of square feet now, and a lot of that did occur during COVID, because the big thing that happened for us, and again, this is why I think it's exciting to be able to offer something more than just single asset certification. During COVID, there was such an immediate pain point, urgent need among large corporations to send a clear message, a clear signal out to their employees that they were doing everything they could, evidence-based, to make their places and spaces as safe as possible. And the big move that IWI made, I was not part of this effort, but I'm still benefiting from it, was this remarkable pivot to take the overriding well standard and innovate to create what they call the health safety rating, which essentially we had these hundreds of evidence-based features, and we convened about a 200-person global expert committee, and we chose the features within the well standard that were specific to COVID, and launched those as a specific product that was designed from the start to be implemented at scale across many assets all at once. And there's been a huge uptake of that, and that's really catapulted our opportunity. And so now we are actually kind of in the process of releasing a series of ratings. One that will be coming out later this year that we're taking extra care with is actually going to be an equity rating for kind of driving kind of like the features within well that help again send that clear signal and message that the employer through their space is doing everything they can to make it as welcoming, inclusive as possible to a wide range of people.
And one of those, the first one's the health rating standard.
Health safety rating. Was launched with a particular focus. It's not only relevant in an era of COVID, but its impetus was the need of large organizations to launch something fast across a lot of assets that just said, we've done everything we can to make this as safe a space as possible during COVID. Yeah,
and look, if you look at all these ratings and building standards, well building standards, and you look at it and go, wow, that's overwhelming or it's expensive, hey, go read about them. You don't have to implement everything and get the certification, right, to get some of the benefits.
No, that's right. We are a global standard. We are truly a mission-driven organization, and I really meant it at the top of the show. I am a physician who is trying through the built environment. It's not the only thing we need to do for health, but it has a big opportunity for impact. I literally cannot do what I am want to do, i.e. change the way we build places without the help of your audience. But I also know that it's a two-way street. And I happily feel very comfortable and confident recommending a focus on people, an overt focus on things like health, well-being, equity, as just good business for the real estate sector.
Yeah. And there's some great things that are small that folks can do, right? Like plants that provide more oxygen, looking at the lighting and seeing, hey, is this lighting harsh and impacting my space?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. There's ways to be part of this movement that you could just start tomorrow, all the way up to, not just doing a single asset for well, but we are also, one of the things we're really excited about is we've actually launched a kind of a platform. Really, it's not really a product yet. The Well at Scale framework, which allows organizations that are really ready to make a commitment at their kind of full organizational scale to kind of to implement well as the standard, to kind of guide the way they just manage assets and writ large, and to make, again, this also helps for things like telling a clear, coherent story about a focus on people to investors. We also are working on a series of tools, but we that do things like help you think about your investment in well, and particularly for clients that target things like the GRESB ESG benchmark. Sometimes the difference between, going up in a star rating on GRESB could just be 4 or 5 points. And we're finding that a careful review with clients of what they're already doing for GRESB, they sometimes don't know how to organize themselves on things like the S in ESG, or also, to be honest, the G in as well. Well has a lot to say about all three of the letters. But if you can find some features in well that are really that extra level of leadership, it can be enough to not only create a great asset, but it can also increase things like your GRESB score.
Yeah, and certainly make your asset more attractive to tenants and tenant
Correct.
reps, right? And for your employees to be in there, or the employees of your tenants to be in there, right? What is the best website for folks to get more information on the well standard?
Sure. Well, if you just go right to the IWI main website for the well standard, that'll just get you jumped right in. So no problem there.
Good. Well, we'll put a link to the website in our show notes at creshow.com. And Dr. Trowbridge, what would you leave our audience with to think about physical and mental health in our spaces, and are we really paying attention, and what should we do?
Well, trust your gut. As human beings, I think we all know how important the spaces in which we live our lives are, in terms of the way they make us feel, the way they help us to be our best selves in every sense of the word. And then think about, I hope that you not only see it as purely, I think, the business opportunity it is, but also know that you're part of something big. You are helping a physician like myself, but a larger public health community, to just think a little more intentionally about how we make the places that we experience. And I promise you that you're not just making a good business decision, but you really are actually helping to make lives better in every sense of the word. And thank you for all that work we're going to do together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'll tell you, I was in my office on a Monday morning, and it didn't feel as comfortable. It didn't feel as good to me, and I didn't really know why. And then later in the afternoon, I came back from lunch, and I found out why. We put out fresh cut flowers every week, and the flowers weren't out. And I didn't know why I didn't feel as good, but when the flowers were there, I just felt better. I'm like, wait, I'm this old, straight, white guy. I didn't know I liked fresh cut flowers. But boy, you just feel better, right?
Absolutely. And that's actually... we should have led with this, but one of the things we're really proud of is that the well standard is a performance-based certification, and we actually, another one of the ratings that I think is super cool as a scientist myself is the performance rating, which, to your point, is really trying to reward asset owners and organizations that really maintain that performance level, not just one and done, but show that they maintain that kind of level of vigilance around things like, as you said, air quality and so forth, from a literal perspective of things like CO2 and stuff like that. But yeah, then there's those other factors that actually end up being important. Like you said, turns out experiencing nature, what we smell, all these things that maybe we dismiss a little bit too fast. If you think about them intentionally, holistically, carefully, and specific, not just to what you like, but to the population you're trying to serve with that asset, everybody's going to win.
That's right. Right. Take care of the people around us that will add value to your life. Dr. Trowbridge, thank you for joining us, sir. Appreciate it.
It really was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. And let us know what you think. Do check out the website for the Well Building Standard and International Well Building Institute. It's really great stuff. And if you want to make your office more inviting, your business location or your assets, check it out. It is the future, or it is now, right? I was saying it was going to be big in the future. It's huge right now, important for all of us. And I'll leave with this. I think if anything good comes out of COVID, it's that we will have a healthier environment to work and live in. Thank you for joining us around the country. Until next week, be sure that you always lead, learn, and laugh. And join us for America's Commercial Real Estate Show. America's Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you by Buxton. Take leasing, site selection, and due diligence to the next level. Make the right decisions with on-demand mobile data. Visit buxtonco.com. By Bull Realty. For proven commercial real estate asset and occupancy solutions, contact me. My email is michael@bullrealty.com. By Commercial Agent Success. Expert-level commercial real estate broker training. Cloud Access 1 up to 21 one-hour videos. Visit commercialagentsuccess.com. Thank you for reviewing, subscribing, and sharing America's Commercial Real Estate Show.